So today we're going to do part 2 of 4-2, chapter 4, section 2. You're going to notice that we're still graphing using tables, all right? If you remember from yesterday, the first part, remember, was kind of like a check. And so we took these and we plugged them in and we checked to see if that ordered pair was on that line, all right? So we did it using our algebra. And then we went ahead and we made a table. And remember when we did this, I asked you to solve for y first. Essentially what you're doing is you're putting things into y equals mx plus b. You're putting it in slope-intercept form and you're making a table, right? And we're going to be using y equals mx plus b later on. So I'm kind of setting the stage for later on. Sometimes it also makes it a little bit less work in your table when you do this ahead of time. All right, so we did that one. And then yesterday we also did these. And remember, y equals -3. There were several students that came in this morning. They're like, how do I make a table for that? You don't. You don't need to. You put a dot on -3 on the y-axis, and you draw your horizontal line. All right? Same with x equals 2. Remember, we put a dot on where x was 2 on the x-intercept, and we draw a vertical line. That's all there was to it, was a horizontal and vertical line. There was no table. So we didn't need to do tables on this. So if you ever have trouble in your homework, you might want to go back to your notes. Might want to take a look at that. That might help while you're doing your homework. Today, we're going to move on to day 2, all right? And you're going to notice that it's a graphing equation type problem. Our difference with this is they gave me a domain. So our domain looks different. Yesterday, they didn't give us a domain. They didn't give us any restrictions. They're like, graph the line, choose whatever values you want, sky's the limit, all right? Today, not so much. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in our information like before. Yesterday, what values did I tell you would be good ones to choose? That's correct. -1, 0, and 1, because we had positive numbers, negative numbers, and of course 0, which was neutral. And it usually worked out pretty well, didn't it? Today is different, right? If you take a look at the domain, they give you a number. Now the number they give you is the number you're going to start with. So you'll notice the number in the domain is 0. And I'm going to put a 0 there. Now, it's not always 0. Sometimes they'll put a 2 or a -2 or a 5. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show my work in my table. So y equals 2 times 0 plus 2. And I'm going to use my algebra magic. And I'm going to draw my line. Right? So that's nothing new. You've done that before. Now, take a look at the domain. Notice it's an inequality. Are the numbers bigger than or smaller than 0? They are bigger. That x, okay, that inequality means that the numbers are getting bigger. So I'm going to choose a number that's bigger than 0, and I'm going to plug in 1 because it's super easy. It's the next number, and my numbers aren't going to get super huge. So y equals 2 times 1 plus 2, y equals 2 plus 2, y gives me 4. Notice all that beautiful work that I have in my table, all right? And remember when I said I want 3 dots, I want 3 values. So what would be a good number to choose next? Sure, I'm going to pick 2. So y equals 2 times 2 plus 2, y equals 4 plus 2, y gives me 6. Okay. Questions? All right. Now, we're going to graph these, all right? But don't draw any lines or anything. We're going to graph it. And we had the value of 0, 2. So I'm going to take 0, 2, 1, 4, 2, 6. And I'm going to put those dots there. Okay, if you're taking paper notes, you're drawing a X and Y axis and you're starting to graph your ordered pairs. Make sure that you have hash marks for the X and Y axis, arrows on your axis. Do not draw your line yet. All right, now go back to your table. Do you notice your first value on the table right here? This is where you start. It's telling you, you know, where to blast off, right? So what we're going to do is this dot 0, 2, we're going to start the blast off here, and we're going to go up and make a ray. So I'm not going to draw a line. I didn't choose the starting point, but I did choose after that. So notice that it's going to look a little bit different than yesterday because they're telling me the starting point, right? Now I'm going to go back to my table and it asks me to identify the range. So I'm going to write range, right? I'm going to put a Y, and then do you see my starting Y value is 2? I'm going to put a 2. Now take a look at your Y values. Are they getting bigger or are they getting smaller? They're getting bigger. So this is what my inequality looks like. Again, when you graph, you're going to start at 0, 2 because it's where you started your table on. And then you draw your ray. When you're looking at the range, you have your Y, which is range. You have your 2, which is your starting value on your table for range. And you'll notice your numbers are getting bigger, so the inequality looks like that. Questions? Okay, let's go to the next problem. We'll do another one. Let's look at this one. We're going to graph this function. So I'm going to make a table. You'll notice it's already in slope-intercept form. It's got Y by itself. Right? I need to plug in values for X. So what value do you think would be first and why? It's going to be 4. And why do you say that? Very good. Yeah, it's right next to the X, and they said that's my domain. That's my starting point. So I'm going to plug in 4, and I'm going to plug in my number. And you can put parentheses around it if you want to. You don't have to. Now, take a look at the X values. Are they going to get bigger or are they going to get smaller? They're going to get bigger because that X is greater than or equal to 4. So I'm going to pick 5. What would be the next value? Sure, I'm going to choose 6. Right? I only need 3. Do I have to choose 5 and 6? No, I could have chosen other numbers. What about 4? Should I have chosen 4? Yes, you need to start with 4 because that's where you blast off from. That's where you start this whole thing from. Let's take a look at our range. Okay, I've got my Y. What value do I put to the right of it? 0, because that's my start, right? And look at my values. Are they getting bigger or are they getting smaller in the range? They're getting smaller. So my inequality looks like that. You'll notice the Y. It goes from 0, -1, -2. It's getting smaller in value, so I flip that sign, which is that Y is smaller than or equal to 0. All right, let's graph this. So I've got 4, 0, and I had 5, -1, and 6, negative 2. I'm going to start at my starting point, and I'm going to draw my ray like a blast off. Questions? Something you don't understand? Okay, I'm going to skip the next slide. You can look on this on your own, but I'm going to do one more example with you, and then I'm going to give you kind of a general guidelines like cheat sheet, rule sheet that hopefully puts all these things together for you, right? So let's do one more problem. The problem I'm going to do is y equals 2x plus 3. And my domain is going to look like this. Whoa. Okay. Notice it looks a little bit different because I've got 2 inequality symbols, don't I? All right. Don't panic. It's okay. It's like 2 for 1. So I'm going to make a table again. What do you think my starting value is going to be? It's going to be negative 3, and I got it from the domain. All right, so I'm going to plug in negative 3. Notice that I'm going to show my work in my table. I'm not going to skip a bunch of steps. I'm going to show everything you got. Now let's take a look at the domain. I want 3 values, correct? One is going to be the starting point. I need one between negative 3 and 0. Which one would you like to choose? I can choose negative 2 or negative 1. Whatever you want to do. I'm going to choose negative 1 just because I want to. You could use negative 1.5, but decimals can get kind of yucky. So I don't know if you want to do that, but you could because it would be in that domain. Yes, good question. Okay, and then my ending point that I'm going to try is going to be what? It's going to be 0. See how they give me the starting point, which is negative 3, and then they give me the ending point, which is 0? Okay, I have to have those in my graph or in my table. So I'm going to put in 0. We okay? Yeah? All right. Let's go now and let's graph these. And I'm going to insert a graph just because I think it's a little bit neater this way. You can go ahead and draw your graph. Okay, so those values were negative 3 what? Negative 3, 3. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, and then I plugged in negative 1 what? 1. And then I plugged in 0, 3. 0. That's not right. Let's take a look. So I had negative 3, negative 3. That's what I had. So negative 3, negative 3. I had 0 what? 3. And I had negative 1, 1. Okay. Do you see how it formed a straight line? Did you notice how I stopped myself? if I would have kept doing what you guys mentioned, did you notice I got a check mark like or a V? Okay, you're supposed to have a linear graph, which means it forms a line. If it doesn't form a line, immediately in your head you should go, oh, something's not right. That's what I did. Right? So now, based on what they gave me the starting point, right, which was -3. And they gave me the ending point, which was, yeah. So notice that this becomes a line segment. I have no arrows. They give me the starting point, they give me the ending point, and I just draw my line between. So this is actually a line segment, right? So if you have graph paper on your iPad, just draw it there. You need to draw it on your sheet of paper because it's not going to come easy to you. You got to have this example in your notes. So there's no arrows. You connect the dots. It's a line segment. Let's take a look at our range. This is kind of fun. Your range should look similar to your domain. So range, it looks similar in that it's a Y, and you've got 2 inequalities. So you have 2 inequalities in the domain. What would be my smallest value for the range? What's my largest value for the range? 3. That's how I get it. It's right from your table. Notice how it mirrors the domain. Not difficult, but a lot of students, they don't ask the question, now where did you get those numbers from again? Like they need to see it again. You also need to practice this because you'll forget. You've done this before. You did it last year. But you don't remember. No. All right, I want to give you your cheat sheet. All right, so domain, graph, range. This is just a guideline, right? So if you have something like x is greater than or equal to 2, your graph is going to be a ray. It's going to have 1 arrow. And your y is also going to look similar to your domain. Now the inequality can switch, but just in general, do you notice how you have 1 inequality and 1 inequality? See how they kind of mirror each other? And it's going to be a ray. When your domain looks like this, your graph is going to be a line segment. You're going to have a stop and a start. And your range is going to kind of mirror it. Not your numbers, but the inside is going to mirror it. Let's write it down. Okay. Now, if you remember the other day, if there is no domain given, no numbers given, you don't have any restrictions like yesterday, they just gave you the equation, you're going to have a line, and it's going to be all real numbers for all our purposes. Just in general. So like they don't give you any restrictions on the domain. They just say graph, you make a table, and you graph it. Done. All right, and then we have one last case, is when they give you numbers like 2, 4, 6. So numbers given, your graph are going to be dots. No line. And your range is going to be, like 6, 7, 8. All right. and they're going to be numbers. So that's what that's going to kind of look. Page 219 has always been trouble for kids. Always has since the beginning of my teaching. Students really have difficulty with it. You do your assignment, check your answers. As soon as you have problems, come in. Come in and ask. Ask during work time, before school, after school. You need to nip it right away. Otherwise, we're going to have major problems later. All right. Questions on this? Okay. Your assignment is on page 219. You're going to do 11 through 15 odd. This is like yesterday, where you pick the numbers in their lines. 27 to 31 is the new stuff with line segments and rays. And then 38 is a word problem, but you don't have to like put up the equation. They gave you the equation, so you're just going to plug some numbers into the equation and answer the question. Okay, so tomorrow is going to be a workbook day. Excellent day to ask questions, right? I'll even give you some time before class really gets rocking, and I'll answer a ton of questions that you have. But if you don't do your homework, can you ask those questions? Can't ask questions when you haven't done the work.